Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Liz Live. Oh my God, it's not even the Liz Live show anymore. I forgot. It's the Rebellious Counselor. I'm the Rebellious Counselor, and you're watching me live on Facebook and Instagram. And I just started a new format, so it looks a little more professional. We've got the lower third going on here, so you can see my name, and it's all really exciting. So hopefully you guys like it and it looks good. And so just bear with me because it's all new, and we're moving upward and onward and forward and making this more professional, and it's very exciting. So tonight is such a great topic. And if I can remember the name of my show, we'll really get into it tonight. So it is the Rebellious Counselor. I am the Rebellious Counselor. And what makes me rebellious is that I see things differently than most of other therapists do, and definitely very different than what my training has taught me to do. And that's what I love doing, is looking at topics that are therapeutic in nature and kind of crushing them and pulling them apart and trying to really see what the real deal is with everything that's going on. So I thought tonight we would talk about love, because everybody wants it. Everybody's looking for it. Everybody wants to be loved, and everybody is looking for that special someone to fall in love with. And everything that we are taught about falling in love and meeting the right partner, I have come to learn is completely, totally wrong. And I know so many wonderful people, so many of my friends down here in South Florida that are single, that are looking for that special someone. They're looking for the right person that they feel is like their soulmates, right? Like, everyone wants the soulmate, and everyone wants to, be happy and fall in love, and everything that we're taught about it is totally backwards. So I'm going to go through that tonight. I'm going to explain why I think it's totally backwards, and what I think we all can do to find the love of our life, to find that right person. And what do I mean by it, by it being backwards? So let's all pause for a moment and think about how we were taught from our families or whoever to meet somebody. Think about what we were taught about dating. And pretty much the general messages that we were all taught, and that I think we still get today, even stronger, but in different ways, is that we have to look a certain way. We have to behave a certain way. We have to achieve certain things. We have to be approved by certain people in order to be love worthy. And anybody who claims that this is not true or this doesn't go through their head is lying to themselves. I really believe that, because it's just the way that our society brings us up. And I can't speak exactly to all other cultures, but I'm positive that in America, this is what we're taught. And we are constantly bombarded with images of how we should look and how we should dress and wear our hair and speak and carry ourselves in order to be lovable, And it doesn't matter what generation you're a part of. It just has always been this way. It just looks different. So I think that in today's world, social media has now become the final destination of the finished product, right? Of how we want to appear to the world, what we want to say about ourselves to the world. And, we're now waiting for likes and loves and all this crap in order to feel lovable and feel important. And what we've been taught and are still being taught as we speak, that in order to be lovable, we have to depend on all of these outside things, all of these things outside ourselves to find that right person. And, you know, again, if you're telling yourself, oh no, I don't think that way, like think again, because I guarantee you that you do. The beauty industry is huge. The weight loss industry is huge. Social media is huge. All of those industries are huge because we're going there and we're searching, we're trying to improve ourselves so that we can be more lovable. But when it's in terms of meeting someone that we want to couple with, that we want to marry, or that we want to settle down with, it's even stronger, right? Like we go to all kinds of lengths to be attractive to other people in all different ways. And, you know, and that includes therapy and coaching and dating sites and, you know, all of that stuff. So everything that all of us have been taught from the beginning of time is that if we want to find the love of our lives, we have to, you know, make sure that we fit in and we connect with all of these things outside of ourselves. And I am here to tell you that that is completely backwards. And it took me probably 46 years, 45 years to figure that out. And I'm as guilty as anybody in buying into, you know, all of the things that I discussed. You know, I would be lying to you if I said I didn't care about how I looked or cared about my physical condition or my figure. I care about all those things. And it's okay to think about those things and to care about those things, but you're never going to find love when that is your focus. And it's very sad because the more that we are bombarded with these images of how we're supposed to be, we're supposed to look, we're supposed to talk, we're supposed to be on and on and on, the more that mirrors back to us that we're not good enough and that we're not worthy enough, or we're not as pretty as the next girl, or we don't have as, you know, good of an Instagram as the next person. And I hear it from all the young people that come into my office who really have it tough these days, way tougher than I ever did, my generation ever did, because of social media and meeting somebody. And that's a whole nother subject. But we're so focused on what we need to do to please other people or to be attractive to other people that we literally just get it all mixed up, right? We get it all mixed up. We get it completely ass backwards. So what I'm trying to convey to everybody tonight is that instead of turning outward and trying to attract somebody with your looks or the way you're dressed or with your social media or who you hang out with or how much money's in your bank account or what kind of car you drive, all the things we've been taught since birth, I'm asking everyone to completely rethink that and focus on how you actually feel on the inside. How do you actually feel about yourself? That is the question. So, how do we know how we feel about ourselves? How do we understand that? How do we know? Well, how do we feel every day when we wake up? Do we feel like life's a drag and, you know, we're miserable and we're not having fun and, you know, everything is terrible? Or do we feel like I'm happy to be alive and I'm happy to embrace the world and I can't wait to, you know, jump in and see, you know, what the day brings me? And it seems silly, but it's a very big distinction. It's a very big distinction because how you approach your day is a reflection of really how you feel about yourself on the inside, right? And so I think that the first thing we have to think about is, you know, how is it that we actually view ourselves and how do we actually feel about ourselves on a daily basis? And Instagram's telling me that they can't hear me. So I'll try and end the feed and restart it again and see what happens. So let's see. Let's X that out. Let's discard that. And let's try one more time. All right. So Okay. So if you didn't catch me, if you didn't catch what I'm saying, and I'm sorry I'm getting distracted, we're talking about how to find the love of your life and how we've been completely taught in a backwards way of how to find love in our lives and how to attract the right people. We've been taught to look at everything on the outside to decide whether or not we're worthy of love. And then from that place, we're going out, we're trying to seek love. And how can you find love when you're not really feeling like you deserve it or you're worthy of it? And it's kind of a deep thought, and it's kind of something that we don't talk about in school, or they don't teach us, they don't teach you, but it's actually so important to really think about it. And it until you can really jump in and feel that you're worthy of love, you will not ever find it. And you will, completely continue on the same patterns over and over again of attracting the same kind of people who are going to mirror back to you your feelings of unworthiness. And a lot of it is really, most of it, a lot of times is not our fault. Again, it's what we've been taught by our parents, is what we've been taught by culture, and it's what we've been bombarded with literally every single day and continue to be bombarded with every single day. And social media has really changed the playing field when it comes to finding love in 2021, right? Because the possibilities that used to be, maybe who was in your neighborhood or who knew who in the family or who knew who in your school or your college or your dorm is now this huge, massive, cesspool of choices and opportunity that is constantly being challenged and is like a big sort of competition that has really changed the entire dating landscape. And I think it's made finding love almost impossible. Almost impossible. And I'm talking about dating apps. I'm talking about all social media, because you're competing in your mind because you're thinking about all of the exterior things that either you have or don't have against all these other millions, literally millions of people who have or don't have, that are all in this big cesspool of, of crap in a way, trying to be better than the other one in order to attract love. And then if we're not satisfied in 15 minutes chatting or talking with somebody that we think is attractive, then, well, we've got millions of other people to choose from. So it becomes like a looping disappointment, right? It becomes really, really competitive and really, really challenging. And it's constantly mirroring back to all of us this idea that we're not worthy. We're not worthy. So if we're not worthy because we're not as pretty or thin or liked or loved or popular on social media or have as much money or fancy cars or whatever as everybody else that we feel like we're sort of up against, then how do we determine whether or not we're actually worthy of love? Because if we don't figure that out and we don't ever really believe that we're worthy of being loved by somebody else, you're never going to be loved by somebody else. I can almost guarantee you. You may find love, you may find a partner, you may find somebody to have a relationship with, but you're not going to be able to really find the love of your life, because the love of your life really has to be yourself. And I don't mean that in a cocky way or a narcissistic way. Actually, quite the opposite. Arrogance is phony confidence, right? So I'm not talking about, being arrogant or narcissistic and only being concerned with yourself, but I'm talking about really having a developed relationship with yourself and understanding who you are and knowing who you are and believing or I should say not believing, because that's kind of a weak word, but knowing that you are deserving and you are worthy of another's love. And if you can't give that love to yourself, how do you expect somebody else to give it to you? Right? Now, as a therapist, there's, hundreds of reasons why perhaps we don't feel worthy of love, right? Maybe it's our parents didn't give us, the go ahead and tell us how great we were, or they didn't instill confidence in us, or perhaps they put us down, or perhaps we were abused, or perhaps we've done things in our lives that we're not proud of. But we have to be careful not to use those experiences as a reason to be unworthy of love. And I think that we all are guilty of that on some level. We're all guilty of that. And so the only way to undo that and to stop, embracing or accepting the mirroring back from society of how unworthy we are and how not good enough we are, we must then turn inward and look within ourselves to really feel that value or that worthiness. And that's a big cookie to start eating away at. So I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to explain how I think that we can do this, and what I do with clients and what I do with myself in order to understand and really build that worthiness. So I think where we start understanding that is, I think we have to stop living in the past, and we have to stop living in what has always been, right? Because as humans, our brains are they're very significant and they're very complex, but they can also be very tricky, and they're constantly, recording memories and giving us feedback that, well, this is what has always happened in the past. This is the way it's always been. So this is the way it will always be. It's the way it will always be. So when your brain is literally feeding you that information on a daily basis, and you wake up in the morning and your brain is telling you that, finding love is impossible because it's never really happened, or, the relationships I've had haven't worked out, or, I don't feel very good about myself, then that's a pretty good indicator that, you definitely need to do some work on yourself. So for beginners, we have to stop living in the past, and our brain loves to give us that feedback loop of the past. And so we have to be aware of that, and we have to be, aware and capable of catching ourselves in those thoughts that are being, constantly fed to us by our own brains, our own psychology, and our own past experiences. Say, okay, wait a minute. I'm not using that past or the lack of what I've had as my focus. Rather, I'm going to choose each day as a new day, and I'm going to think about maybe what might happen that could be really exciting today. And it doesn't have to be that you're focused on that, finding that killer romance that you want. You don't have to necessarily, be desperate and beg for that every day. But again, that would be an external focus, right? So if you wake up every day and, oh, I want to meet someone today and I have to meet someone, I want to meet somebody, that's an external focus. That's not focusing on yourself and your love of yourself and your love of your life and your love of all the beauty that surrounds us. And I know that's really hard to do and really hard to see when in the past you've had bad experiences, or you didn't have, parents or family or other lovers who helped instill those messages in you. But it's also a good time to wake up and realize that it was never their responsibility to do those things for me anyway. I mean, and that's really liberating once you realize that. Like, oh, I thought my parents were supposed to do this for me, and my other lovers were supposed to do this for me, my friends and my boss, and everyone was supposed to tell me how wonderful I was or how good I was so that I can internalize that. And that's how I believe in myself, which to me is totally wrong. And believe me, I've done it most of my life. We all do. And I'm saying, no, it has to be about a connection with ourselves. with ourselves and in some ways the world around us, which we can call universe, higher power, God, nature, whatever you want to call it. But I think there has to be that connection there in order to start really being able to attract true love, real, meaningful, deep love into our lives. And just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. Doesn't mean it won't. So we begin by sort of assessing where we are. What are our belief systems about love? What are our belief systems about ourselves? And, you know, if you look back at some of my previous podcasts, I talk a lot about this. We talk about tapes, the negative tapes that play in our head. We talk about guilt. We talk about all of those things, being trapped in all of those things, and how to break out of that, right? Because those things hold us prisoner to everything in the past, and they have nothing to do with the future. But yet we're convinced that our past means this is what the future will be. And as long as you think that, so it shall be, right? And as long as you're comparing yourself to every other thing, every other human being, or every other woman, or every other man, and measuring yourself against all of the different ways we measure ourselves in society, which largely has to do with looks and money in the United States of America, you're doomed. Because you're never going to be satisfied that way. You're never going to feel like you are going to be perfectly beautiful. And you're always going to find, there's always going to be something. None of us are perfect. And we're never going to arrive at a place where we're just absolutely perfect with ourselves emotionally or psychologically either. So get that idea out of the way. Okay, forget about perfection. I'm not looking for that. Forget about all these external sources dictating or mirroring back to me whether or not I'm worthy, and start turning inward and looking at yourself. Okay, that's the starting point. That's the starting point. So once we do that and we really assess, I think most of us will find that we really do feel very unworthy of love. And I think it's sad, but it's something that I've really realized from doing this kind of work for 13, 14 years. We all seem to focus on the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't love, or we don't like so much, we don't accept. And we look at life very much in the same way, rather than looking at, what we do have to offer, or what is, and the beauty around us, and really falling in love with that aspect. And again, I'm not talking about arrogance and narcissism, because those are ugly things. And that is just a cover for feeling very insignificant. But I'm talking about true self-love. So when I talk about this, my clients go, well, how am I supposed to do this, Elizabeth? How do I start really liking myself? How do I do this? So it's a good question. So I've been really pondering this for the last couple months. And here's what I've come up with. So I say to my clients, okay, if you were starting a new dating relationship with somebody, okay, you just start seeing somebody brand new. How do you get to know them? How would you go about getting to know them? And, usually the answers are, well, I'd go out on a date with them, or I'd have coffee with them, or I'd talk to them on the phone, or, I'd meet them out with friends. And I say, okay, exactly. Okay. So we know when we're trying to get to know another, we know exactly what to do, right? We know what questions to ask. We know where we want to go with them. We know what we want to wear. We know what we want to say. We have all of these things available to us when it comes to connecting with others. But when it comes to connecting to ourselves, it's like we have no idea how to do that. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? So what I've come up with is sort of this idea of dating yourself, but not actually dating yourself, but doing things with yourself that you would do with anybody that you were trying to get to know, literally anybody. So you might, start out with quality time, right? So when you really start to get to know somebody that's new in your life, how do you get to know them? Well, you get to know them obviously by time spent, conversations and time spent. So why don't we spend quality time with ourselves? Everyone's so afraid of being alone. Or, what's the big deal about, staying at home? I love to stay home, a lot by myself. It doesn't bother me. I actually enjoy it. But then again, I'm with people all day, constantly with people all day long. So, it's no wonder I like time to myself. But I think it's something important that we should all get into the habit of doing, especially if we're single, to really spend quality time with yourself. So, okay. And then my clients say, well, what does that mean? Spend quality time with yourself. Well, it just means the same thing you do with anyone else. So, maybe it means taking a walk on the beach by yourself. Maybe it means, sitting at home with a glass of wine and listening to music that you like. Or maybe it means pampering yourself a little bit, maybe it means laying in bed and watching a movie by yourself, but really getting comfortable with you and the things that make you happy and things that you like to do. Because if you don't know those things, how can you expect somebody else to figure that out? And if you don't know those things and someone else cannot figure that out for you, then how are you supposed to truly be able to connect to another in a really meaningful way, in the most intimate way that you can possibly connect to somebody, which is through romance? That's the most intense, really, I think the most intense relationship that exists. So you can't expect others to know what you love and what makes you feel nurtured if you don't know the answer yourself, right? So my recommendation is start spending some time with yourself alone. Alone. Yes, alone. Am I encouraging you to go out to a movie by yourself or go to dinner? No, not necessarily, although that's cool too. I was talking to a friend of mine last week and she goes to concerts by herself. And I thought that was really cool. I did do that once, many, many, many years ago. I was in Las Vegas and I went to see Neil Young by myself because the person I was visiting had to work, and I had a great time because you're just going and you're just enjoying an artist that you like to watch. What's wrong with doing that? And if you're really adverse to doing public things by yourself, because that is so shamed in the United States of America, so shamed, right? If you're out by yourself, you're a weirdo or you're creepy or something, we may not be willing to do that, but we can definitely spend time doing things with ourselves that make us happy. And it can be volunteering at, a cause that makes you feel, like you're contributing to the world, or again, reading a book, watching a movie, cooking, painting, whatever, sports, whatever it is that you like to do, get comfortable and used to doing it by yourself and be open to sort of adventuring into the world if you don't know what you really love and what makes you really excited, and try to figure it out. Because again, if you're really looking for that deep romance, that, sweep you off your feet, deep connection, and the love of your life, which, pretty much every single person that I know wants that. Everybody wants to be loved and to love. You really have to start with yourself. And it sounds so, like such a Hallmark card, but I really believe it to be true. But I believe it to be true in a very deep way, not in a way that is, I think I'm cute, or I think I'm smart, or, that's all just talk. I'm talking about developing a deep, meaningful connection with yourself. And I think that you can do this even if you're not single, even if you're in a marriage or in a relationship. it can always be new, and it can always be different, and it can always be better, and it can always be improved. And getting connected to you and what makes you happy and you feel nurtured and you feel loved in an autonomous way can only benefit a current relationship and the quality of your relationship. And certainly if you're a single person, it's only going to help you attract the right people. If you feel that you're lacking in a very strong way, or you feel like you're less than, or you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, which is really, when you're comparing, that's, again, an action that's coming out of the lack of, right? You feel like, well, I'm lacking something that she has or that he has, and therefore I'll never meet anybody. Or I hear so often from clients, well, I'm 60 and, men are looking for, girls in their 30s to date. And, I have to just, live the way I am, and I'm like, no way. That's such a bad way of thinking. That's such a way of thinking out of, a lack of, instead of, I'm not sure what the right word is, but, approaching things from the lack of something or the lack of what you feel you don't have versus what you do have to offer. There's a big difference. So you're jumping off from two completely different, levels, right? So if you're going out and you're looking for love, feeling the lack of things or feeling ashamed of things or feeling, not good enough, then chances are, like, you may find somebody to date, don't get me wrong. I mean, you may very well find someone to date or a relationship, but what is the quality of that relationship really going to be? And I think we've also been told a lie and been set up in our society that, we can't be happy without a partner. We are not credible, and we are somewhat of a charity case if we're single, especially if you're a woman, then you're really doomed. And if you're a woman over like 35 and you're single, oh my God, it's like you're an alien or something. So, we're constantly being fed all this stuff that makes us, again, I know I'm being repetitive, feel so bad about ourselves and feel like we're coming from such a lack of, that it's no wonder that we have, 51% or 50% of marriages ending in divorce. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that, infidelity via social media is at, an all-time high. It doesn't surprise me that, depression and suicide and eating disorders and all of these things are at such a peak right now. And I really blame it so much on the way that we are raised and the way that we're taught to believe about whether or not, or how we decide what our value is or what our worthiness is. Because at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with what we look like. It has nothing to do with our weight. It has nothing to do with the money we have in our bank account. It has nothing to do with our education. Those are just descriptors that society will approve of. Oh, okay, he's got money and he's got a nice car and he's got a good job, must be a good guy. Well, we all know that's not true, right? That doesn't mean anything. What's meaningful is the heart, is the kind of character that you have. And if your character is not fully developed, then you're going to wind up with another character that is not fully developed. And, good luck with that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I want everyone to find love. And I've always been passionate about that. I've always been passionate about romance and relationships. That's why I'm, a relationship therapist. And I believe that we've just been really going about it the wrong way. And, I have so many young, beautiful girls that are, my clients that are 30 or 28, and, they're miserable because they're single and they can't find anybody. And I have young men that feel the same way. And, when you ask them what they want in a relationship, they give you like this, like a stock list, smart, funny, this, that, the other. I'm like, okay, we all want that. That's nothing special. That's nothing interesting. That's nothing. But people really don't know how to answer that question. And that's another reason why people have been going about finding the right person completely backwards and completely the wrong way. So basically, what I'm saying, guys, is that if you want to find the one, if that's even exists, but if you want to find a person that is meaningful and special and loving, you better find yourself meaningful, special, and loving, and really learn how to be fully authentic and fully connected to yourself. And I'm telling you, that's the only way it's going to happen for you. Keep chasing, a pretty face. Keep chasing a thick wallet, and you may get those things. You may very well get those things, but you're not going to get love. That you will not get. So think about that for a second. Think about how backwards we look at dating, how backwards we look at ourselves, and how backwards we look at relationships. And then we get into the relationships, and then we're still not happy. Why are we still not happy? Because we're still depending on the other person to make us happy. And that never works. That never works. That feels suffocating to the other person. It feels controlling, and it will never work. You will have chaos in that relationship. So other people cannot make you happy. Only you can make you happy. You could be miserably depressed and meet the greatest person in the world, but because you're so depressed and because you're so negative, you'll miss it because you're not connected to yourself. You're not loving yourself, and you're not loving the gift of life that you've been given. You're focusing on the lack. You're focusing on what's not there, what you don't have enough of, or whatever negative narrative that we tell ourselves when it comes to finding love. So we're starting out with, the way to begin to create a relationship with ourselves is not really any different than the way we would create a relationship with another. Quality time spent with ourselves, taking some adventures and doing things by yourself in order to gain confidence that, hey, I can do things. I can trust myself. I can accomplish things on my own. And I don't need another person to do for me. I don't need another person to make me happy. I would like it. It'd be great. I would love the companionship. I would love the love. I would love that feeling. But I don't need it because I'm enough within myself. And if you take a minute and read any great philosopher that's ever walked this earth, it's what they all talk about. Rumi comes to mind, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with Rumi, but he is a Hindu, Indian philosopher, sage, whatever you want to call it. And he has some beautiful poetry if you ever feel like looking it up. And it's all focused on the love of self and the love of God and the love of life, and that falling in, it's like the Whitney Houston song, the greatest love of all is inside of me, right? And it sounds like such a Hallmark card. And I used to listen to that song and read Rumi's poetry, and I'd say, oh, Rumi's a great writer, so just a beautiful writer, but I don't get this. I don't really get it. And I could sing along to the Whitney Houston song and, recite every word of it. But I didn't really connect to it. I didn't really connect to it. I mean, how can you when you're in a society that's, constantly mirroring the opposite, and it's only gotten worse as time has gone on. So we're spending quality time. We're getting to know ourselves. Another idea I have about getting to know yourself that I suggest to my clients. So if you were getting to know somebody new, most of that getting to know somebody new not only revolves around spending quality time together, but it also revolves around communication, right? Communicating with somebody, asking them questions, finding out about, their upbringing and, what they studied in school and what kind of things that they like. Well, why can't you ask yourself those questions? I bet, 90% of all people probably don't even know any of that information about themselves. You think you do, but you don't. You don't. So it might be interesting to do some journaling, because journaling is having a conversation with yourself, right? It's writing down things that you're thinking, things that you're questioning, things that you're wondering. And when you put it on paper, there's magic that happens, right? Because when you're just talking into the thin air, those words go away, those ideas go away. But when you write it down and then you can read it and reread it, you really start to get a new perspective of yourself. And I have like stacks of papers, that I keep, and I'm always writing things down and writing thoughts down. And this is new for me. I've only been doing the writing down thing for the past couple months, but I love it. And then I can go back and read it, and I'm getting to know myself in a completely different way. And it's very exciting. And I think it would be exciting for you to try that too. And you might realize things about yourself that you never knew. And it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, So that journaling process, that writing things down, that spending quality time with yourself, these are all things that you would essentially do with someone you were dating, right? Just different ways of getting to know other people. Another idea that I really like is taking some adventures and trying new things and seeing how that speaks to you and seeing how you can learn about yourself that way. And in regards to that, I'm talking about, take a course, take a cooking class, take a art class, take a rock climbing class, join a gym or whatever, but do it on your own and try to do something that's more of a one-on-one type of activity, so that you can, or like a class or something where you can really, you have an individual responsibility to that activity. So you have to engage, you have to perform. You can't just, sit and depend on someone else to do it for you. Take an active role in new things and see how it goes. You might hate it, and that's something good too, because, okay, that's not for me. I don't like that. That doesn't speak to me for whatever reason. So, I'm going to try and, try something else. And all these different things that you're doing, you're awakening a part of yourself that has been untapped and untouched. And believe me, we're complicated people. There's many, many aspects and many complexities to our personalities, to our character, to our souls, that we're always evolving and developing. And so there's always something to learn. There's always something to gain. There's always something to find out about yourself. And when you can approach your own life with that type of excitement, then each day becomes exciting. Each day becomes a new adventure, just like a date, right? So if you go on the first date and, you don't know what to expect, and let's say it goes really well, and then you go out for your second date and the third date and the fourth date, the first few months of dating are like, what we call the honeymoon stage. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can have a honeymoon stage with yourself, no matter where you are in your life. Really, whether you're married or not, whether you're single or whatever you are, there's always new opportunities and new chances to challenge yourself, get to know yourself, and open new doors. And when you can approach love, finding love and finding romance with that approach, then each day becomes exciting and adventurous. And you start to notice, okay, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit different. I'm feeling a little bit different. I'm starting to feel a little more excited. I'm starting to feel a little more connected. I'm starting to see things a little bit differently. Things are looking up. Things are looking more beautiful. I'm falling in love with life. I'm falling in love with, hello, I'm waving to Stefan. Stefan is my dance instructor, and we can talk a little bit about that and why that's so exciting. Because we're talking about new activities. So something I decided to do, one of my friends was, brought the idea to me, and I love to dance. And I thought, well, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. And I love it. And I look forward to going every week. It's a ballroom dancing. And let's talk about dancing. We're talking about dancing. And I have actually a performance tomorrow night that I'm very nervous about, Stefan, but I'm excited. And it is the best activity ever. Dancing is fantastic because it's something that's challenging you, that you have to be good and you have to sort of push yourself, and you also get to express yourself. So I love physical activity. I love dancing. It's great therapy. And I highly recommend it. And I highly recommend going to Let's Dance Miami. It's fantastic. You'll love every minute of it. Tomorrow, 7:30. Yes, I'm performing and there's a party and it'll be really fun. So thank you, Stefan, for jumping in. But what we're really talking about, and I love dancing with you. It's awesome. It's really great. It's really great. So a little sidebar there, but I'm not talking, out of the thin air. These are all the things that I'm suggesting are all things that are tried and true that I have done, that my clients have done, and that are making significant changes in their life. So I think the bottom line is we have to remember that you're not going to find happiness, true joy. I should use the word joy. There's a difference. You're never going to have a joyful life when you're depending on other people to make you happy or to make it joyous. People bring so many, my relationships are so wonderful and nurturing. And I don't mean to say that relationships aren't important and don't bring beauty to your life, because of course they bring so much to your life. But those relationships aren't going to mean much to you if you don't feel deserving or worthy or satisfied with the person that you are. And there's a backwards narrative and a backwards value in society that the only way we can be really loved and lovable and deserving is if our parents say that we are, if our, if our friends and community say we are, if society says we are, if social media says we are, if our past lovers said we are. And when we're being bombarded with those backwards messages, it takes all the focus off of ourselves and onto the outer world to make the decision as to whether or not we're good or bad or lovable or acceptable. And you will be very miserable living that way for the rest of your life. So I can't encourage you enough to get to know yourself and to develop a relationship with yourself just like you would with another person. And you might be very surprised at what you find. And once you get there, Once you get to that point where you feel like you're in that zone, or you feel like you're in that groove and things are starting to look up and things are starting to change, and you're starting to really enjoy being with yourself and enjoy who you are now, not who you were 20 years ago, or not who you were when you were 10 years old, or not how your grades were in school, or nobody cares about any of that stuff, right? I had a conversation with a client of mine tonight, and I said, I've never picked a friend based on their grades in college, or how much money they have, or, whether they're married or single, or anything like that, ever. I've always picked friends, chosen friends based upon the way I feel when I'm with them. And if it's not good, then I would say get out of those friendships or get out of those relationships. And what kind of human being they are. Are they kind? Are they caring? Are they pleasant? Those are the things that really matter. And hopefully we can learn to view ourselves in that same way, and we can say, yeah, I am kind. I do contribute to the world around me. I am well-meaning. I do have exciting aspects of myself that I would like to share with other people. I do feel that I'm worthy of love, of another's love. And yes, I want those things, and I can have those things. But if you are approaching your dating life or your love life from a position of lack, or what you might not have that the next one does, or you might not be as skinny as the next one, or as muscular as the next one, or as much money as the next one, you're done. You're doomed. You're doomed. We base way too much of our self-worth on the external world, when really it needs to come from within, with the connection with ourselves. And once that gets stable, then just watch how the world changes, right? When you change the inside, everything on the outside changes. So everything we've been doing and taught from the time we were born about finding love is completely backwards. Completely backwards. So please, if there's anything, any message that I can convey to you, is get to know yourself, spend time with yourself, take adventures, and learn how to love and appreciate yourself. And then you're going to draw people to you who feel the same way about themselves and are capable of giving you the love that you want, right? Because you may love yourself, but if you're with someone who doesn't like themselves very much, you're not going to get much out of that relationship, right? You'll be doing all the giving, all the pouring into another person, and then you'll be exhausted. You won't have anything left, right? So you want to make sure that you're paired up and you're attracting a romantic partner that matches where you are and appreciates themselves and life enough to be able to truly appreciate another. And on that note, folks, I'm going to say goodnight and thank you for watching The Rebellious Counselor, breaking boundaries and ties to traditional, boring therapy to something that's fun and fresh and exciting and is not afraid to go against the grain. That's what we do here on The Rebellious Counselor. Again, like Stefan said, if you're not doing anything tomorrow night and you're in South Florida, on 154th Street, Let's Dance Miami's having a performance evening and a holiday celebration at 7:30. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be quite a few dance performances and great people, wonderful place to go and try something new. And so if you're doing that, I'll see you tomorrow night. And if not, I will see you back here Saturday morning at 11 for another live Rebellious Counselor. And I hope you guys like my new, not on Instagram, but on Facebook, I have all kinds of new fun things going on the screen. I've got a lower third, I've got color, and it's just going to keep getting better and better and better. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Everything can be found right here on my Facebook page from Actuation Counseling and on my Instagram page. My YouTube channel is The Elizabeth 126. Hit subscribe, like, live notifications on Instagram and Facebook so you know when I'm going live so you can partake. And all of these live shows are always available right on social media and always on YouTube. Have a great night and don't forget to love yourself. See you Saturday morning.